Hello people and welcome to my latest video on my top 1000 countdown. On this video we're going numbers 730 to 721. Not many videos, okay, from the first 300 being finished, but still a long way to go. So let us go to the first fighter in this 10, okay, and it is former welterweight champion Ike Quartey. Now Ike Quartey, okay, beat 4 world champions. He fought 92 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, also fighting 24 rounds against Hall of Famers in his career. Ike Quartey had 10 fights against rated opponents, and in total he scored 32 knockouts, okay, 17 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 10 first round wins. Now Quartey was top 10 rated as a fighter for 11 years. The longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 35 fights. And Ike Quartey was once the example I showed of a fighter on a long unbeaten run with a lot of knockouts, making lots of title defences, and how the career derailed from after that point. Okay, the first blemish, the career kind of never recaptured what it was. Just a warning for modern fans. So Ike Quartey was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Yeah, good morning, Martin. Good to see you, buddy. And he had 6 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 2 wins. Ike Quartey scored 1 win in his career against a pound for pound top 3 fighter and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. Ike Quartey's opposition fought rate was 2 from 18 and his opposition beat rate was 1 from 13. So Ike Quartey, okay, had 9 fights against champions. That includes 4 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw with 2 KOs. He has 2 fights against Hall of Famers, both of which are defeats. And Ike Quartey had 10 world title fights, including 7 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, and 7 title defences. So considering he went unbeaten in his first 35 fights, but yet against champions he ended up with a split record, blah, blah, blah. Have a look at his career, how it went. Go to the first unbeaten run, the first blemish, and see what happened after that. His career kind of self-destructed. So, which is why I always never, on a long unbeaten run with some title fights thrown in mix, I never get overly excited because, studying boxing history, I'm aware that these things can happen and careers can get derailed. Some fighters can be on a long unbeaten run, they look sensational, then they take one bad shot, get dropped, after that can't seem to, hold a punch very well and just fall to pieces for the rest of the career, losing to fighters who they would never have lost to in their long unbeaten run. Yeah, it's strange. But anyway, there's Ike Quartey, okay, so let us go to fighter number 729, is Shorty Hooge. Now, Shorty Hooge, okay, beat 1 world champion. He fought 26 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 individual Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 86 rounds against them. Now, against rated fighters, Shorty Hooge had 17 fights against rated fighters. He scored 24 knockouts, 10 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 2 in the first round. Now, he was never top 10 rated as a fighter, strangely, and his longest unbeaten run ran to a total of 29 fights. Now, he was never pound for pound rated. He did have 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. Shorty also scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. His opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18 and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So, fights against champions, he had 3, okay, including 1 win, 2 loss, no draw, with 0 knockouts. He has 10 fights against Hall of Famers, scoring 4 wins with 5 losses, 1 draw, and 0 knockouts. And Shorty Hooge had no world title fights. So on to fighter number 728, okay, it's a fighter who had a tougher career than people give him credit for, Rex Lane, okay, famous for Rocky Marciano's fist and his teeth, okay, not Rocky's teeth, Rex Lane's teeth. Rex Lane, okay, beat 2 world champions. He fought 57 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 individual Hall of Fame fighters. Rex Lane also fought 57 rounds against Hall of Famers. Now, against rated fighters, Rex Lane comes in with a total of 28 fights, a very high total for down at this level. He scored 34 knockouts, 18 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 5 in the first round. Now, Rex Lane was top 10 rated for a total of 3 years, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 19 fights. Rex Lane was never pound for pound rated. He did have 6 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 2 wins. He also in his career scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter, 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters, and his opposition fought rate is 3 from 18 and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Rex Lane, had 6 fights against champions. That includes 2 wins, 4 loss, no draw, 0 knockouts. He has exactly the same record against Hall of Famers. 6 fights in total with 2 wins, 4 loss, no draw and 0 knockouts. And Rex Lane never had a world title fight. So Rex Lane is in 7-8. When we go to fight is 7-7, is Robert the Ghost Guerrero. Now Robert Guerrero beat 8 individual champions. He fought 119 rounds against champions in his career. And Guerrero beat no Hall of Fame fighters. He did fight 12 rounds against a Hall of Famer, of course, getting beaten in rather one-sided fashion by Floyd Mayweather, of course. And Robert Guerrero had a total of 17 fights against rated opponents. He scored 20 knockouts in his career, 10 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 5 in the first round. And Guerrero was top 10 rated as a fighter for a total of 7 years. Now, his longest unbeaten run was one of 17 fights, and he was never pound for pound rated. Robert Guerrero had 4 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 1 win. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 rated fighters. And his opposition fought rate is 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 1 from 13. So Guerrero, had 13 fights against champions. That included 8 wins, 5 losses, 0 draws, with 4 knockouts. He has that 1 fight against a Hall of Famer, Floyd Mayweather, which was tongue-tied, which was a defeat, of course. And Robert Guerrero had 8 world title fights. That included 5 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and 2 title defences. So from Robert Guerrero, we go down in weight, to an excellent lower weight fighter called Saman Soljaturong. Now, Saman Soljaturong, beat 2 world champions. He fought 36 rounds against champions. And Soljaturong beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter. He fought 9 rounds against Hall of Famers in his career. And Soljaturong had 9 fights against rated opponents. His number there is a little bit lower than what would have been because some of the lower divisions only came in towards the end of the 80s, from the 80s on, so there wasn't the history there for some of the divisions. Same with minimum weight, you see. Ricardo Lopez suffers the same discrepancy there. A bit like pre-rating era, there wasn't always those lighter divisions around the time just before or prior or just after or between when these guys were fighting. So it's a bit like pre-rating era. Some of these guys suffer a little discrepancy. Now, Soljaturong was a good puncher down there. He scored 34 knockouts, 13 in 3 rounds or less, and 4 in the first round. And he was top 10 rated, for a total of 6 years. Now, Soljaturong's longest unbeaten run was one of 26 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 2 years in my all-time rankings. Now, Soljaturong had 2 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win. He scored 1 win, against the pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And his opposition fought rate is 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 1 from 13. Well, as well as Martin, who I've shouted out, very good hello again to Andre Rodriguez. It has been a while, Andre. I hope you're well. I hope you're really, really well. I had to close my old channel down. I developed an issue, so I closed that one down. I've restarted it here, and the work begins again, Andre, on rebuilding it. But on this channel, as I said when I launched it, I'm going to be not uploading nonsense or silly responses to people. It's going to be pure boxing content, but really, really good to see you. Martin is, to me, one of the most dependable supporters you could have. Very lovely guy, easy to talk to, very always around. I really appreciate having Martin around. But to Andre, Nick Harmer, who I kind of lost contact with, and all these great guys out there, I always like to give a good shout out to let you know that support has always been very appreciated. So Saman Soljaturong, had 6 fights against champions. He scored 2 wins with 4 losses, no draws, and 2 knockouts. He has 2 fights against Hall of Famers, scoring 1 win, 1 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. And Saman Soljaturong, has 14 world title fights, including 11 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and he made 10 title defences. One thing about Saman Soljaturong, he is one of the underrated wins to many people on the career of Ricardo Lopez. Ricardo Lopez actually defeated Soljaturong at a time And the reason how you know it's a good win is because after Ricardo Lopez had beaten him, he went on to have a long reign as champion. So basically that's a really good win for Ricardo Lopez. And when a lot of people look at Ricardo Lopez's career, they look at the Grigsby's and the Rosendo Alvarez's and all these other fighters, and very rarely do they mention Saman Sorjaturon, who, like I said, was beaten by Ricardo Lopez, but then went on to be a long reigning champion. So, very, very good little fighter down there indeed. So let us go to our next fighter now, fighter 725, and we're going back to the former coloured middleweight title list, and to one Joe Butler. Now, Joe Butler, defeated 4 individual champions, he fought 44 rounds against champions, and Butler beat no Hall of Fame fighters. He did fight 4 rounds against Hall of Famers. And Joe Butler had, I must have mistyped that. He can't have had 21 fights against rated fighters. He's pre-rating here. So Joe, that's totally wrong. I'll put the correct number under the video in a comment. So Joe Butler, scored 32 knockouts. He's 0, I believe. Scored 32 knockouts. From those 32 knockouts, Joe Butler scored 26 of them were in 3 rounds or less. And he also scored 12 first round wins. So obviously, as a massive puncher knocking lots of people out, don't pay attention to who he fought. He's on the Wilder tree. He's got a crazy knockout record. Look, never mind everything else about his career. Sorry, I promised I'd stop having digs at Deontay Wilder, who's now delusional and saying that Alexander Usyk has only done better than him because Usyk was given all the opportunities that Wilder was denied. Vladimir fight, Joshua fight multiple times, DAZN deals, Joseph Parker fights, unification fights. He was denied, everything, wasn't he? So anyway, leaving him there. Joe Butler's longest unbeaten run was one of 20 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Now, Joe Butler had 8 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 2 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Joe Butler's opposition fought rate was 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 1 from 13. So, on to the fights against champions. Joe Butler had 13. Scoring 4 wins with 8 losses, 1 draw, and 3 knockouts. He has 2 fights against Hall of Famers. Both are defeats. And Joe Butler had 5 title fights, including 2 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and he made 1 title defence. Yeah, what's happened to Dunstan the First? Oh, you're back on it now, mate. Martin Dunstan the First, yeah. Dear me, you're making me choke. Andre Rodriguez, for months I've been absent off YouTube boxing channels due to, life. But never missed BL, even in silent in the comment section. Yeah, appreciate that, Andre. So, one channel I always check regardless. Yeah, I appreciate that, buddy. Love that picture of Visit Ted Kid Lewis, by the way. So, anyway, big shout out to you guys. Hope you're both really, really well. So, Joe Butler 725. I'm fan geeking out. Supporter geeking out a bit. I always said, one final thing before I crack on and get these final 4 fighters done. One thing I always said is, on the other channel I had some idiots show up, but I had one of the best. When I did my live streams, I had one of the best live chats you could have. There'd be Nick Harmer, there'd be Andre, there'd be Martin Dunstan, there'd be Rasclot, there'd be Haplotype. Such a great bunch of guys. It's Ad Wolgast. Yeah, that's right, Ad Wolgast, I remember now. It looks similar. I can't, because it's very small on my screen. It looks similar to a pose on a famous picture of Ted Kid Lewis. I think that's why I got it mistaken, because I can't see the face. But yeah, Ad Wolgast, yeah, hell of a lightweight fighter. So, Young Firpo, beat 1 world champion. He fought 30 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter fighting 30 rounds against Hall of Famers. Now, Young Firpo had 18 fights against rated fighters, and he scored more knockouts than... I said I won't. He scored 43 knockouts, okay, 26 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 12 in the first round. Now, young Firpo was top 10 rated for 1 year. The longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 20 fights, and young Firpo was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Now, against pound for pounders, okay, young Firpo had 6 fights, okay, he scored 4 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And his opposition fought rate was 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. Yeah, interestingly, Andre, if you look around for pictures of Ted Kid Lewis, you can find one almost identical pose to that. That's what threw me off at first, because I think there's another YouTube commenter who goes around, not a channel, I think he's a commenter, and he has the picture of Ted Kid Lewis in a very similar pose. So that's what threw me off. So young Firpo had 3 fights against champions, okay, going unbeaten, albeit a small run. 2 wins, no loss, 1 draw with 0 KOs. He has the same record against Hall of Famers, 3 fights, including 2 wins, no loss, 1 draw with 0 knockouts. And young Firpo had 0 title fights. So on to our third to last fighter, okay, Juan Diaz, okay, the Bull. Now, Juan Diaz, okay, beat 5 world champions. He fought 98 rounds against champions. And Juan Diaz beat no Hall of Fame fighters individually. He fought 21 rounds against Hall of Famers thus far in his career. And Juan Diaz had 10 fights against rated opponents. He scored 21 knockouts, okay, 8 of those knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 5 in the first round. Now, Juan Diaz was top 10 rated for a total of 6 years, and his longest unbeaten run ran to a total of 33 fights. Now, Juan Diaz was pound for pound rated for 2 years. He had 4 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 or pound for pound number 1 rated fighters. And his opposition fought rate comes in at 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Juan Diaz had 9 fights against champions, including 5 wins, 4 loss, no draw with 2 KOs. He had 2 fights against Hall of Famers, one of them pictured, of course, Juan Manuel Marquez, who is way higher in the countdown, both of which were defeats. And Juan Diaz had 11 world title fights. That included 8 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and 7 title defences. The best photo of him that I have, it's an ongoing uppercut that he landed on Nelson in his second fight. It cost me a small fortune, but what a photo it is. Yeah, I can imagine. So, on to, okay, another UK fighter, okay, John Conteh, who some people regard him as the best UK fighter. Me, personally, I don't. John Conteh beat 1 world champion. He fought 43 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, but Conteh did fight 19 rounds against Hall of Famers. And Conteh had 12 fights against rated opponents in his career. He scored 24 knockouts, 10 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 4 in the first round. And he was top 10 rated for a total of 7 years. The longest unbeaten run in the career of John Conteh was an unbeaten run of 20 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 1 year. Now, he did have 3 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 1 win. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters or pound for pound number 1 rated fighters. And John Conteh's opposition fought rate was 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 1 from 13. So Conteh had 4 fights against champions. That included 1 win, 3 loss, no draw with 1 knockout. He had 2 fights against Hall of Famers, both of which were defeats. And John Conteh had 7 world title fights. That included 4 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and he made 3 title defences. So people, there's 9 of the 10 fighters down. The 10th fighter now, and the final one for this video, okay, is Sayensak Muangsurin. Now, Sayensak Muangsurin, okay, beat 4 world champions. He fought 66 rounds against champions, and he beat no Hall of Fame fighters. He did fight 3 rounds against a Hall of Famer. Now, Sayensak Muangsurin had 13 fights against rated opponents, and he scored 11 KOs. He didn't have a massive career. He scored 11 KOs. He had the unfortunate luck to run into a very big name fighter. We'll see who that was. I'll let you go look at his career and see who that was, hence the Hall of Fame defeat in the early rounds. Sayensak Muangsurin had 13 fights against rated fighters. He scored 11 knockouts, 2 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round, and he was top 10 rated for a total of 4 years. Now, Muangsurin's longest unbeaten run was one of 8 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 1 year. Now, he had 2 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 1 win, but he scored 0 0 wins against pound-for-pound top 3 or pound-for-pound number 1 rated fighters. And Muang Surin's opposition fought rate was 1 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 1 from 13. So Muang Surin had 8 fights against champions, including 5 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and 3 KOs. He has that 1 fight against a Hall of Famer that was a defeat. Yeah, Sayensak Muang Surin, yeah. Yeah, quite a good cagey little fighter, quite a good little aggressive fighter. I recommend everybody, if there's footage of these guys, go watch some of these guys. Sometimes they're in fabulous fights, and that's one of the reasons why I always say when people look at a resume and they say, right, who Hall of Fame has he beat? Right, that's it, that's all he's done. That's not all they've done. When you look at the Hall of Famer who beat Sayensak Muang Surin, and look what he did, most people wouldn't look at Muang Surin on this fighter's resume and even pay any attention to it. They'll say, I don't know who he is, not realising he's a world champion. He had piles of world title fights. It is what it is. So, before we mention title fights, Muang Surin had 12 title fights, including 10 wins, 2 losses, no draws, and 8 title defences. So there is my latest video now. Like I said, go check out Sayensak Muang Surin. No, light welter, Muang Surin. Yeah, he was a bigger fighter than what you'd generally find for people from his region of the world. There are some exceptions to that, like Kiso Kim and other fighters, who was an excellent light middleweight fighter. But there's many fantastic fighters out there. And, when people, like I mentioned, when people look at the Hall of Famer who beat Muang Surin, one of my favourites, when they look at him and see this name on resume, they ignore it, not realising the guy made 8 title defences, but they don't care about that. They don't even give his name a second look. They just look and think, I don't know him. They don't realise that the guy that this guy beat were a world champion, a successful world champion. That's why I always say, don't only look at the prestigious names that people have fought. When you look at a resume, you have to look at the full composition of the resume, which is why I came out with the opponent ratings. Okay, because other people would not give anyone any credit for beating Sayensak Muang Surin. They'd look at the name, think, I don't have a clue who that is, he's some unknown dude. Whereas my opposition ratings do score the fighters who fought Muang Surin the credit in the score for beating him, which is why my opposition ratings were so vital, to get done, to give fighters the proper credit for the resume, not only who they've fought, but more importantly, who they've also beat. But anyway, there we go. There's my latest video. Big shout out to Martin and Andre in the chat. Good to see you back, Andre. Great to see you back. And as always, Martin, much appreciated, mate. As always. You guys take care, okay? I'll be back over coming days with more videos as I keep churning through my top 1,000. Everyone take care. Have a great day. I'm the Boxing Librarian. I meant to say, I'm out for now.